Tony, the man himself, he has been with Channel 9 for 30 years. Now, to put that in some sort of context, I'm 31. So he's essentially been there the entirety of my life, and I don't say that to make him feel old. Okay, yeah, I do. It's just to solidify the fact that surviving 30 years in the news business is bloody difficult unless you're talented, and quite obviously he is. Aside from Channel 9, he's also the go-to person when Neil Mitchell is sick or unwell or just wants the lazy day off. Tony will fill in doing the morning show, and I believe he'll be doing that next Monday and Tuesday.
And this Friday, yep.
And this Friday as well, so there you go. So Neil Mitchell's taking a very long weekend.
That's nice.
Well, for him, yeah. So that should give you a bit of an indication that at Channel 9, Tony mostly does sports content, but clearly if he's going over to 3AW, he knows a lot about business and about politics as well. And he also led the state election coverage during the most recent Victorian election too on Channel 9. And again, throughout the course of his career, he's also written a lot of news-related articles for online and print journalism as well. So there's a lot of knowledge to tap into here, and you'll be given your chance to ask a few questions of him later on. But I guess I might as well get the ball rolling. 30-year career, that's an achievement. Let's go back to the very early stages of, to the point where I wasn't quite born yet, and you were still successfully working in the media.
Yeah.
What encourages and inspires a young kid to get into the media? It's such an unstable career.
Well, unstable in the sense that you can be sacked at any time, yeah. It is that sort of, it's a bit like football coaches. You just don't know. You're driven on results, and at 9:04 every morning, our ratings come through. And we dive on that computer and we look at our ratings because we live and die by them. I've been married for more than 20 years and my wife still goes crook. She'll say, you'll be 90 years of age in a nursing home and you'll still look at those bloody ratings, and she's probably right. Look, we thrive on them. When they're not good, then we worry and we think, well, what did we do wrong? How can we fix them? And we can pinpoint things pretty accurately nowadays because, when I started, we used to get the ratings once a week. And that was great. That was great when you had a good week. But if you had a bad week, you had to wait a whole week before you could sort of have a chance to have a look at the ratings again. But we can pinpoint them now. If we do a story on, say, one of your businesses, and we'll get to that a little later on because we have hour-long news services now, so we will do stories on just about anything if it's got a hook to it. And by a hook, I mean if it's got a genuine news hook to it. We're going to talk about that a little later on.
Yes.
So what the point I'm making is that not only do we get our news figures, we also get a news graph. And that graph tracks our news minute by minute. And you can see that if there's a story that didn't resonate, then the graph will go like that and the opposition might come up a little bit. So that's how accurate it is.
So you talk about living and dying by your results there. For a period of time with you at Channel 9, you weren't winning the results. So
no.
Why did you and say Peter Hitchener survive?
And Lavinia Nixon. Because fortunately, management's a great believer in continuity and experience and familiarity. And when I started, we had Brian Naylor who was reading the news. I was doing sport, and after a couple of years I was doing sport, and we had a few weather people in the process. But when Peter Hitchener took over from Brian Naylor, when Brian Naylor retired, I think that was like 18 years ago now or something. So for 5 of those years we were running second to Channel 7, but management stayed true. We stuck fat, and they said familiarity will get us through while the others chop and change. I think people like to turn on their televisions at 6 o'clock and see a familiar lineup, and that's what we tend to do, hopefully.
I think you would achieve that, yes. So, looking more from a perspective of people here and their reasons for being here tonight, can you pinpoint an area of, say, a topic or an area of business that consistently attracts you to wanting to do stories about it?
Well, keeping in mind, I do sport, right, but I'm in a nice situation where I can do any story basically. And on weekends, and this is something that I really want you to absorb because it could be really relevant for you, is that on weekends in particular we're looking for content. For some reason we have a lower staff rate on weekends. It's just that weekend mentality. So we're always looking for feature stories. Now, by way of example, I did one a couple of weeks ago on, and this was, I don't even know how it came to be. We're probably going to talk a little later on about how you get stories. This was a story about dogs in the workplace. Now, I know, you sort of think, well, okay, what's so interesting about dogs in the workplace? It happens I've got a dog, so I'm a bit of a dog lover. So I said to the boss, I wonder how many workplace... Oh, I know what it was. One of the guys in the newsroom had said, oh, have you seen this article? In America now, 20% of businesses are dog-friendly, pet-friendly. And I said, oh, geez, I wonder how many, what that would be. Well, it's very hard to work that out here in Australia. So we rang around and got a few companies. And there was one company, Vino Mofo, which is a startup company and a very successful wine, I don't know if you call them a wine merchant or not, I guess you would. And they've got like these 6-7 dogs running around the office. Then we went to the Melbourne Theatre Company, just through a source, we knew that they also had dogs there. The point I'm making is, Vino Mofo got an enormous amount of exposure out of that story. It was a beautiful story. I got so much feedback on social media as a result of that. But, Vino Mofo, the guy I spoke to who started up the company had the T-shirt with Vino Mofo on there. When we put his name up there, I think his name was Justin Dry, I beg your pardon. We had under his name Vino Mofo. They got a lot of exposure, all because of a story about dogs in the workplace. I mean, and when I first said that, you sort of laughed a bit. It ended up being a genuine story because it does have genuine benefits to the workplace. There's less stress with the workers, which means there's less days off, etc., etc., etc. So the point I'm making is it doesn't have to be that much of a hook for us to actually build 2 or 3 minutes around a story. To give you an example of how sport and business, I suppose, as an extension of that, have really embraced social media, when Philip Hughes died, the cricketer, Cricket Australia announced that on Twitter. So, we have actual people